Welcome back to the podcast. Hey, before we get started today, I just need to take a second and say thank you to all of my audience and all of our audience out there. Look, last week, 130,000 plus downloads on YouTube alone. Jonathan and team and everybody in the background, thank you for coming along on this ride with us. We still saw that some of our guests hadn't subscribed yet. If you could take a second, just like and subscribe today. It does make a difference in how we get these amazing guests on. So thanks for all of you joining the ride with us. Today we've got an amazing guest. We've got Beau Turner, who really is with a company called Abundant Minds. He's going to demystify what Bitcoin is. If you want to learn about Bitcoin, watch and pay attention to the show right now. We're about to dive in. Beau, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Anthony.
Yeah, when we look at Bitcoin, it's something that I thought I knew something about, but when you and I started talking, I understand that the code and how how each miner approves a transaction, and the transaction string is what kind of makes it verifiable. Maybe you could take it through maybe just a 101 for our audience, so we really understand what is Bitcoin, and then we'll dive into how do you mine Bitcoin.
Sounds great. Well, just to start off, I think what goes unappreciated by most people going through their everyday life is the systems that make the foundation of how they navigate the world. And in the same way that many people have questions about Bitcoin because it's new, it's technical, there's a lot that goes into it, many of us never ask the questions about how does our existing monetary system work? How does our existing energy system work? These fundamental ways that we navigate the world often go unexamined because we just kind of take them for granted. But because we have something like Bitcoin to hold up a mirror to them, suddenly we've got a lot of questions, and those are all very good questions. So to keep it really simple, Bitcoin is a digital asset. It's a monetary network. It's a way of moving value around the world quickly, with final settlement, with low fees, in a way that stores value over the long run. So contrary to most currencies that most people are familiar with that lose value over time because they don't store energy well, because they're inflated, because there's more of them every year, more units of that currency every year, Bitcoin is unique because it has this fixed supply of units that will ever exist on the network. And to get that fixed supply, to get those units, you have to expend work. You have to perform an energy transition. You have to take energy, input it into the network through the mining process, and actually spend energy and resources to make that new Bitcoin. And that's part of why it has value. If you think of the closest analogy that most people are comfortable with, compare it to gold. Gold is valuable because it's challenging to fake gold. It takes a lot of energy, resources, time, effort, and refinement to get a gold bar out of a hillside. And that work that goes into it, the difficulty to fake that work, is part of what gives it value in commerce. And people are willing to accept that it's going to hold that value far into the future because there's no easy way of just making a ton more gold. The difference between Bitcoin and gold, of course, is that even though gold is scarce, it's still inflating. About 1% to 2% of the gold supply is added every year because they're continuing to mine. Now in Bitcoin mining, we are always mining new Bitcoin, at least until we get to that 21 million supply cap. But after that, there's no new Bitcoin. So the inflation rate after that point in the year 2140 is zero, which has never, ever happened before in any sort of monetary asset in the history of humanity. And it's part of why this is such a unique technology, and I think is going to reshape the way that we cooperate as human beings into the future.
So in 2140, the last Bitcoin will be mined. Is that kind of the concept?
That's correct. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, okay, so after 2140, there's no more Bitcoin to be mined. So how are the miners going to keep securing the network? And the answer to that is miners get paid right now with new Bitcoin that get mined, but also with transaction fees. So if you are sending me Bitcoin, Anthony, you're paying a transaction fee to the network to actually perform that action. And when that Bitcoin gets sent, that transaction fee is actually getting paid to the miners. The reason it gets overlooked is because it's a small part of mining income right now, but over time, definitely in the next 10 years, we'll see that become probably the majority of the income that miners make is from transaction fees from people actually using the network.
Now, the The miners are handling all of the transactions. So I buy something with Bitcoin. I go to my Bitcoin wallet, right? I open that wallet and I pay for an item. The miners are the ones who actually are doing the transactions across the network.
Exactly. You can think of miners as an analogy as sort of a hybrid between a payment processing network like a Visa and a security force like the military. So miners are both moving value across the network and getting paid to do that. And they're also getting paid to actually secure the network from outside attackers.
All right. So, but with a physical dollar bill, right? Unless someone breaks into my bank and takes the dollar bill, I can physically walk over and I can touch it. I can rip it. I can hold it. There's a physicalness to it, right? In the digital world, how do I know that, China or Russia or somebody isn't out there making more Bitcoin? How do I know what's a real asset and what's not a real asset?
This is a great point. And it's one of the reasons that Bitcoin is so special is that anybody can verify what the total supply is, who owns what, that the protocol isn't making more than 21 million coins. It's as simple as running some software on a laptop computer. And that's part of what makes it so ideal is that unlike something like gold, which is pretty much the best analog we have to a store value asset before this, you can't actually do an audit of how much gold there is in the world. You can't do an audit to know, does China really have 8,000 tons of gold or do they really have 60,000 tons of gold? Because it's up to them to report it. Bitcoin is really easy to audit. I mean, it's trivial to audit it. Someone can't send you fake Bitcoin if you are running the Bitcoin core software. And that's part of what makes it such a great asset is that you can see all of the internals of the network, even if you can't make an action on them. So to use an analogy, Bitcoin is like a giant wall of post office boxes that's made of glass. You can see what everybody has in their post office box, but unless you have the key, you can't do anything with it. So it's a completely transparent ledger that you can see exactly what's happening on, which is part of why it's a terrible network to commit crimes on because everybody can see them and it lives there forever. But if you have that key to the individual box, you can take something out, move it to another one. But even if you don't have a key, you can still see what's going on.
All right. Now, so can people see what's in my box?
If they have access to the public address, they can see what's in that public address. However, if you haven't done any sort of KYC, there's no real history of linking that wallet to you, they may not know that that's you. So a good way to frame it would be, this is not an anonymous network, it's more of a pseudonymous network. So you can keep your identity veiled, but there's a way for someone to tie that back to you, then there's not really any hiding it. It exists on a public ledger.
So it's interesting. So you might be able to see the box, but you can't tell who owns it unless you've seen a transaction. Right.
So there's ways of peeking back into where funds have moved from to be able to tell, there's ways of navigating this where it's very easy to stay private. But in theory, the more actions you take in this network, the more transactions that you move, there's more of a, let's call it a paper trail that could eventually be tied back to who you are as a person. So people dealing in very large amounts do pretty much whatever they can to obscure who they are, how they're moving funds. A great example of this would be Strategy, which is the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin. We don't know exactly which wallet Strategy is using to hold their Bitcoin. And I think that's a very smart move on their part, because even though Bitcoin hasn't ever been hacked as a network, individuals can be taken for their funds if they have bad security practices. And so they remove the attack surface by being at least a little bit more anonymous than if they were just broadcasting, hey, this is my public wallet and I know you can't get to it, but here's where it is. So they remove their attack surface a little bit.
Well, and that's what feels, the most difficult part of this for me is like, understanding the getting on the other side of that veil, right? Being able to see it. Look, with the financial world, when it comes to dollars, I know I can take a dollar bill, I can put it in my bank account, I can see it in my ledger. All right. And I can do the same with Bitcoin, right? I take Bitcoin, put it in my box, right? My secure box, and I can see my Bitcoin. Now I open that box and I transfer that money to a vendor, a person, my kids, however I want to do that. Now, are you saying I can do that anonymously, but there's also a way to see that? I'm not sure I understand that.
You can, if you're moving funds across the network, so long as there's no identity link, you can stay anonymous for as long as you want. So in that example, if you had Bitcoin that, say, you acquired through mining, because mining is a way that you can get Bitcoin without it having a name attached to it, and then send it to your kids, but nobody knows your kids' wallet addresses, and there's no information to tie that back to you or to tie it back to them. But if, say, for example, you purchased your Bitcoin on an exchange like a Coinbase, and Coinbase leaks their data, which unfortunately has happened a few times, then there's a record showing, oh, Anthony bought 5 Bitcoin and then sent 1 Bitcoin in pieces out to a couple of his kids, or, these addresses that we're going to assume are someone related to him or somebody who's paying for goods or services. So privacy protection is something that most people don't think about, but is something that you can definitely plan for when you're getting into this space.
All right. So now we can see the transactions, right? So I make a transaction. I mean, let's talk about why it's such a safe network, and how do we know it's not, my coin isn't being duplicated on the other side of the planet with somebody? How do I know that?
So this goes back to mining, is the energy that is expended to secure the network, to validate these transactions. If you wanted to fake Bitcoin, if you wanted to like add new Bitcoin to the ledger, you would essentially have to get all of the computing power and more that is currently validating the network, and then go and expend that just to spend a fake transaction. So what Bitcoin runs on is a system called proof of work. It's a proof of work blockchain. Many people have probably heard of proof of work versus proof of stake. Proof of work is essentially saying, I have to go expend energy and resources in order to validate this chain. And if I want to invalidate it or overwrite it, I have to expend more work than the current participants on the network. So if I wanted to go fake that I had 10, 100, 100,000 Bitcoin, I would have to take the entire mining network, or the equivalent energy and computing power, and direct it toward essentially rewriting the rules. And I would have to do that forever into the future. And that's part of why the network is so secure, is there is a real physical resource cost to try and fake what is happening on the network, what exists on the network. And it's really the main security benefit of the network, is that by design, it is expensive to attack. And that's all that it has to be. It doesn't have to be impossible to break. It has to be very expensive to break, so that the incentives never align with attacking it.
So with new supercomputers coming out and with AI models coming out, how is that? Have you seen an impact on that?
That's a great point. And it's part of how the network is architected, that the security of the network is through an algorithm called SHA-256. And that's an encryption algorithm. And it's something that can only be broken by brute force. So there's no intelligence, there's no clever way around it that actually breaks this algorithm. It's pure resource expenditure. So when you think about how the network actually works, what we're doing when we're mining is not solving some smart algorithm that takes intelligence. We're actually more accurately just guessing random numbers. And the person who guesses random numbers the fastest, and there's literally hundreds of trillions of these guesses happening all the time, is the person who wins the next block, who adds the next block to the chain, processes all those transactions. So even if Amazon, Google, Meta, every one of them took all of their existing computing power, all of their existing data centers, and pointed it to the network to try and either compete or do something dishonest, they could not do it because their computing power is not architected in the right way. You can think of it as like the difference between these SHA-256 ASICs, they're guessing random numbers, whereas the GPUs that most people are familiar with are more accurately solving complex problems and performing matrix calculations that actually have a lot more flexibility. But when it comes to brute force, they're much slower.
All right. So when you're mining, let's talk about what are you essentially doing when you're mining?
When you're mining, you are taking energy. So these miners are plugged into an energy
power.
source.
So you're saying plugged into the grid. So power. You got a physical plug into your grid, into your CPU, right? Now, how many numbers are in a blockchain?
How many numbers are in a blockchain?
Yeah. Like how many? Is it always numbers?
No, it can be a string of characters as well.
All right. So it can be characters, numbers, letters. It can be any. A blockchain isn't necessarily always numbers. So that's something I didn't know.
You could think of a blockchain in simple terms as just being a database. So a database that many people can contribute to and many people can store their information on and validate. So when you think of, this is a great example, actually, the current financial system is essentially just a database. So when we talk about printing money, nobody's actually printing new dollar bills. They're really just adding zeros to a database. And that database propagates through a few different nodes. So the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin blockchain, is just a public database that we're all participating in verifying. And rather than it being controlled by a government, a central bank, it's controlled by the people that contribute to the network and participate in the network. It is a monetary system for the people. It's a grassroots monetary system rather than a top-down control monetary system. So all that we're doing is saying, this is our database. It's not going to be corrupted by rulers. It will be run by rules that we can guarantee into the future.
All right. So what I'm having a hard time comprehending. So, when it comes to a physical dollar, I have it either in my bank, right? There's some Fort Knox or under my pillow or in my backyard buried in coffee cans. Somewhere I've got this dollar bill in a place, right? So there's a physicalness to the place. In Bitcoin world, where does it hang out? So where is that? Where is the coin at? Like right now, I've got a couple Bitcoin. Where are my Bitcoin? I go to that Bitcoin app, Coinbase. I've got that. I don't know. I bought a few of them every one. Bitcoin drops. I'm like, oh, I should probably buy them when it drops. Now, I'm not sure I understand the whole investment I'm making yet, but I just look at it and go. Truth is, when there was big drops, I just went and bought some Bitcoin. Yeah. Right? I thought, all right, look, in my portfolio of things is probably the thing I understand the least, right? Harry, I barely understand the stocks and bonds and how they operate. For me, it's always been real estate. I touch a doorknob, I can paint the place, I fix the roof. I understand real estate and the real estate world really, really well. It's a majority of my investments are there because I can go and touch it. I can rent it. I can touch it. I can fix it up. I can live in it. I have a thing there. Right. So my little monkey brain looks at it and goes, I understand that. Now, when it comes to this, you talk about, these databases. I'm like, what do you mean database? Is a database the server in that room that you're building? Is the database this floating thing in the internet, just numbers floating through the internet? Where is and what is the database when you talk about?
So I completely resonate with where you're coming from because I was a full-time real estate investor, and that was close to 100% of my wealth building and preservation strategy. So completely appreciate where this is coming from. The answer to the question is your Bitcoin lives on the network, and that network lives in tens of thousands of devices around the world.
Okay, so sir, when you say tens of thousands, these massive farms I see, right? These massive Bitcoin farms. So when I say Bitcoin farms, what I think of is a warehouse, a facility that just has, where essentially what I have right down here on my computer, right? This little tower, right? I have towers with memory and RAM, and right, I have essentially that's what it is, right? It's like a server or a mini computer that sits there. And so it lives in those?
Exactly. And it's not even necessarily the large farms. So the actual code of the network, the records of the network, you don't have to be mining to have the whole storage of the blockchain on your local device. Like you could have it on the computer that we're talking on right now. You could be running the Bitcoin Core software and have a copy of what's happening on that network. So when you talk about having your funds on your phone wallet, what you actually have is just an access point that has essentially your password in it. But the actual funds exist all over the world so that they, one, can't be moved without that passphrase that's on your phone, but everybody has a copy of them. So even if you, say, lost your phone, the Bitcoin isn't lost. It's still exactly where it was. What you've lost is your access to it.
So let me back up again here, and this is where I'm sure. Look, my audience is saying the same thing, or same thing that we are. All right, I read an email. I send the email out to you. So Anthony, Beau, great having you on the podcast today. I send that email to you. The way I understand it to go is it gets broken up and it goes through a bunch of different servers and it ends up back at your email address. Your email address is essentially access to Beau. Mm-hmm. Right. So as my email travels, it's not like it goes, here, when I travel in a car, I walk out my door, I go get on 290, I drive down the street, I make a turn, and there's one path that my car takes. The way I understand the internet to work, or an email to work, is that it breaks up and it goes through servers. It may go through, a dozen servers around the world to get to you. Is that similar to what we're talking about?
The difference between the way an email propagates to a recipient and a transaction on the network, the Bitcoin network propagates to someone, is instead of having something go from one machine to another, as things do on the internet, when you move a transaction on the Bitcoin network, it's not actually even going from one place to another. You're just shifting the value on the network from one address on the network to another address on the network. And everybody can see that operation.
So the Bitcoin stays where it is. Just access moves. So the doorway, so here, just imagine, okay, where is that access? Where is that? Where is it? So if I wanted to go over and touch my Bitcoin, how would I get to my Bitcoin?
If you wanted to get to your Bitcoin, you'd need, using the analogy that I talked about earlier with that glass wall of PO boxes, you have a key that allows you to access your Bitcoin. And
all right, so here, I have a key to, let's call it one Bitcoin. And I'm sorry if I'm going to dive into this because I feel like my audience is the same thing. Here, Jonathan, I think we're both, we all say, we all go like this. We understand. None of us understand. Here, everyone that's on here listening right now, do you guys all feel the same? Here, in the comments, please write if you're feeling as dumb as I am right now. And I just want to know, right? So, and I got you on here. So it's the first time I've got someone who understands this the way that you do. So, and I'm sorry if I sound like, I feel like a little boy asking.
Most people aren't willing to ask these questions. And I think it's the worst disservice that they do. I think honestly, you were smart to get some just so that you have the reason to go learn about it. And that's
exactly why. Here, I've said to myself, in a world where this is going to be a future, it's like the first time I got on AI 8 years ago. I just started playing with these ideas that made no sense. But all of a sudden one day it popped for me. I'm like, boom. It was like the day I could see AI, there was a whole nother possibility for my life, right? Like the day I saw AI, it wasn't like more of the same, better. It was a whole nother world I could exist in, right? And I'm hoping that this is what's about to happen with you and I here. So I'm going to go down this a little bit more. So I want to go I want to be able to go touch my Bitcoin, right? I'm on a mission today. We're going to stop the world and everything from moving. Just for a second, we have magic wand. Stop. Now, Beau, let's go see my Bitcoin. How are we going to go see it?
You can see your Bitcoin anywhere with any computer that's running the Bitcoin core code. So if you have what's called a full node running, you have access to every transaction, every current balance, every bit of Bitcoin that exists on the network lives in every copy of that. So you can think of a node as like an access point or even a redundant backup. So when we talked about the Federal Reserve having databases, there's maybe 13 copies of that live in each one of the Federal Reserve branches. Whereas the Bitcoin network has tens of thousands of copies. I don't know exactly how many at this moment, but continuing to grow with people who are able to see the entire data set and verify that everything that exists and that has ever happened is true and honest. So using that, you can see your Bitcoin anywhere. It doesn't exist in physical space, right? I mean, that much we understand. It's not a physical good.
No, here, hold on. I just said I did understand that. I do not understand that. So hold on. I want to go back. So there is no physical, I cannot stop the internet and go find, if I go open up my computer and I were to rip apart my hard drive, on the hard drive, could I find zeros and ones, and can I find these symbols someplace on that hard drive?
You could find your access to the Bitcoin. So,
right, so
when we talk about
my code that takes me to where my coin is.
Exactly. So there's two different types of keys on the Bitcoin network. There's your public key and a private key. The public key is what we talk about when we talk about your address, the thing that people send funds to, the thing that people can see in public everywhere. The private key is your key to unlock those. So if you have your private key, which is just a string of information, people often abstract it to 12 words that they can remember, then you have access to your funds anywhere in the world. So if you have your private key, those 12 words or that string of numbers and characters memorized, you can literally carry billions of dollars around in your head because you have the key to access that information on the network.
All right. So here, if just help me out here. So I have the key. I can remember a 12 code. I'm not sure I could. I barely have enough time to remember someone's phone number. But all right, let's here. I pretend like I can remember 12 symbols. I have those 12 symbols. Where do I go to see my coins? What's that number? So do I go to blockchain.com?
You can do it through your current phone wallet. I mean, this is the thing, it's software. So there's hundreds of ways that you could actually access your funds if you have those 12 words. So those 12 words give you access through whatever you want to use, a phone wallet, a hardware wallet. Sometimes people used to do this funny thing. I've got, for people that can't see this, a little physical Bitcoin. This is just
okay, yeah, I got it. I see them all the time. So is there?
So there's no Bitcoin on this, but what people used to do, these are called cassatious coins, is actually put a little QR code or an inscription on the coin that was just a reference to those 12 words, that private key.
Got it. So that would essentially, you could give that to someone and go, here, I'm going to give you a Bitcoin. And on there would have a QR code that would take you to the 12 numbers that would give you access to the Bitcoin.
And that's a pretty unsafe way to store Bitcoin for anybody who's thinking about doing that. I wouldn't do that. But just as an example, there's nothing truly physical when it comes to the asset Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a digital asset. And that's what we mean by that. There's no physical part of Bitcoin. There are physical representations of ways that we access it. When we talk about like a phone wallet or one of these hardware devices, these are physical ways that we can store bits of information in a more accessible way. But Bitcoin itself is an intangible asset, which means that it doesn't degrade. It doesn't depreciate in the physical sense. It doesn't ever lose energy. It's ones and zeros that exist somewhere on a secure database.
Okay. Now, how do I stop China from duplicating my access door or pointing whenever I point to that number, them looking inside and getting my number? I mean, so they're on my computer and they're watching my actions. How do I know, like with my dollar bills, right? I've got my dollar bills under my bed. Me and my shotgun protect that dollar bill. Right? I mean, here, come in my house. I'll blow your face off. Here, all you guys know that, right? You guys all know that I have guns and I will blow their face off. They come in my house, right? Here, I'm not the guy who's not going to blow their face off. So, here, my audience laughs, right? You guys know I've got the. They're all laughing right now. So I'm not afraid to blow the face. So, but with Bitcoin, how do I? Where's my shotgun and how do I protect my pile?
So you're protected by cryptography. And to make that a little bit simpler, what's essentially protecting Bitcoin is math and physics. And the physics and the math of how hard it is to guess those 12 words. So when you say 12 words, it doesn't sound like someone could guess 12 words, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I imagine these supercomputers are about to be able to figure out, I've seen, I watched James Bond, right? they got some little thing that, random algorithm cutter, whatever. Here, I get it. What's the guy that, cuts through all the locks? He's his special guy on Q. Yeah, Q. Yeah, Q. John's still right. Q. Like Q. Here, listen, I got a Q somewhere in my life. I got a couple of guys that like that. So I got Q. And Q will, break it through. You're saying that's pretty hard to do.
Mathematically, you could take essentially all the data center capacity in the world and go try to guess your wallet, Anthony, those 12 words. And it would be like hitting a grain of sand in all of the galaxies in the universe. That is the probability, even with that much computing power. So you're secured by the mathematical improbability of not only not finding your money, ever finding anybody's money anywhere. Because if you think there's hundreds of millions, soon to be billions of people using this, so there's, billions, tens of billions of wallets out there that have a non-zero balance. Even taking account of how many wallets there are with funds to find through that spray and pray method of just guessing numbers and letters, still thousands of years worth of computing power to find even one. And that is what is securing your funds, is the improbability of that ever happening and the resource intensity of what it takes to even pursue that course of action.
All right. And so I'm guessing that, that's difficult enough to figure that out. If someone's trying to do that, is a network able to see that? Is there like a security system in it that goes, oh, here we go. These are some bad boys in, Africa. They're logging on and trying to break Bitcoin. Could you see someone doing that?
Not for individual wallets, but this is a great way to talk about that. Is most people have probably heard of Satoshi Nakamoto as the creator of Bitcoin, the anonymous creator. So Satoshi, in the first couple of years of the network, was a miner, was mining new coins. There's about 1 million coins spread out between a few large wallets that belong to Satoshi that have not moved since the early days of Bitcoin. And you can think of that as like a bug bounty or a honeypot, that someone with enough resources, with enough computing power, that is your ticket. I mean, that's well over 100 billion worth of a bug bounty, the largest one in history, if you can figure out how to hack a wallet. And those are the oldest wallets too. So they're not even, upgraded with the newer encryption standards, the newer security standards. There's been some changes to the protocol. So these are running on effectively old wallet design and still have not moved. Nobody's cracked them.
So the idea is that we put the honeypot out there, and that's really the magnet for the malevolent ones that are out there trying to attack the system. They'd go after obviously they'd go there first.
Exactly.
To do that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Before they come after your few coins or anybody's few coins, even a few thousand coins, they're going to go for his 1 million coins, guaranteed.
Interesting. So the kind of the honeypot's kind of the, I mean, unless you're like going, hey, I'm smart enough not to go against this guy because he's smart enough to do this. He's going to come find me to sleep. He's got to be some ninja somewhere. And his name alone, isn't it really just Elon Musk? Isn't he really Elon Musk? Is what we're all saying? Does anybody have an idea who we really think he is, or is that just a fake name? Or does anybody really know who he is?
There's so much speculation. I haven't been convinced by any of the probable people who might be it. And I think that's part of what's makes this so beautiful, is that there is no person to take out at the head of it. There's no, even if you find out who Satoshi has no more power over the network than any of the rest of us, because it's a proof of work system. If you're not mining, if you're not expending energy, if you're not running a node, you have no additional power over the network. And that's why it's so special, is it's this grassroots financial system that has no central planner, no central point of control.
All right. So now, when I'm mining, am I essentially running random numbers like a system? I go 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2 2 3 3 3 3 3, and then I've just got some random counter that's running this deal. And while I'm doing that, I'm also verifying transactions.
Exactly.
All right. So just while I'm mining, I'm 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2. I got all 12 numbers. I'm just right. Is that am I saying that right?
That trillions of times per second per machine.
All right,
And
trillions of times
millions of
per
machines
second.
around the world.
Millions of machines around the world doing right. Do you guys all see what I'm saying? I just imagine like this wheel of numbers and letters and characters just right, just kind of spinning, 12 rows of them just going at the same time, and that's happening millions of times a second in millions of computers around the world simultaneously. While they're doing that, I want to send a Bitcoin over to Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, you want a Bitcoin?
Yes.
All right, let's send him a Bitcoin right now. I'm gonna send Jonathan a Bitcoin right now.
Thank
all right,
you.
Let's go open up my account, right? I'm gonna send it over to Jonathan. And how does that Bitcoin get from my wallet? So here, hold on. In my wallet, let's say I've got a few Bitcoin, right? Essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying to Jonathan, I'm going to give you access to the one of the, call it 3 that are in there. I'm going to give you one of the 3. I'm going to give you, I'm going to move my access point from me over to you.
You're moving a balance from your wallet over to his wallet. And the way that happens is the mining process. I love the machine gun sound. That's probably going to be B-roll. Yeah, that's going in our videos now. What is happening is you're guessing all these random numbers, right? And these random numbers are essentially meaningless on their own, but we call it a blockchain, right? So it's a chain of blocks. Every individual block has thousands of transactions that it's aggregating together and settling as a part of that group of transactions. So when a miner finds a block, what they're really doing is finding the random number that satisfies an equation that completes that block, adds it to the ledger, and then starts the process for the next one. And about every 10 minutes, a new block of thousands of transactions happens. When you send your funds to Jonathan, what's actually happening is you're creating a transaction that gets grouped together with all of the other transactions that are trying to get into the next block. And once that block is found, added to the ledger, then that balance that was in your wallet just transfers to his wallet on the network. And everybody can see that action. Everybody can see that happened. It's final, can't be reversed, can't be falsified. And then that money is Jonathan's. And as long as he has that private key to access those funds, then he owns that coin.
Okay. So earlier this week, my computer got broken into and all of my emails were sent to my archive file. I don't know why they did it. I have no idea why. Every one of my emails, the 3,000 or 4,000 unopened emails are in my file, all got sent over to my archive system. I have no idea why someone would do that or why someone would break in and do that, but they did. And I got to my computer. I'm like, I have no emails. Now I'm trying to figure out why that happened. I don't know why, but somebody somewhere outside of me, and truth is it could have been me hitting the wrong button somewhere. Easily done, because that's how smart I am over here. All my files end up over there. Now, how do I know Satoshi and his group of bandits don't just come in one day and wipe away my account? Like, remember my dollar bills, you come over to take my dollar. Satoshi shows up at my house, I blow his face off. I have no way of blowing his face off in this non-physical world. I mean, how do I trust that?
So this goes back to it being a grassroots database, a grassroots monetary system. There's no central person or group of people that can go rewrite the rules and take your funds. So as long as you agree that the nodes all around the world are validating the network, storing that transaction history, and that all of the miners like us are acting honestly and acting in our economic best interest, then no rules like that are ever going to get violated or bent. So far, they never have. And so your funds are secured truly by code, physics, math. And there's no person who can engage in any sort of workaround to that unless they get your private key. So in the email hacking example, if you had your private keys somewhere in your email inbox, that's an attack surface. They have access to your funds. If anybody has that string of numbers and characters or access to those 12 words, then they have access to your money. But if they can't get that, then your funds are secured in a way that nobody can violate. There's no government backdoor. There's no developer backdoor. This is a rule set, a software protocol that doesn't have a central server. It's not like when Meta bans your account and you have to go find someone in that organization at the top. That's a central point of control, a central point of failure. They can shut you down. They can deplatform you. It's totally up to them. That's one party in control of your access to your information. On the Bitcoin network, there's no such thing as that. There's no central rule keeper other than the software itself.
But now, can I, if I have a problem with my Bitcoin, like, hey, I went to get in my Bitcoin, I don't know, the code, I have the key, I have the code to get there, but I can't get in there today. What do I do?
You ask someone for help. Ask someone for help that knows what they're looking at.
Okay. Got it. So it's usually what, a problem with the number I have, or I wrote it down wrong, or the place I go to access it.
Yeah. If you're doing everything right, there's no such thing as like, sorry, 404 server error. You can't get to your Bitcoin today.
Yeah. I heard this morning. I went to my Tesla, right? I drive a Tesla. I drove a couple Teslas. I went to get my Tesla this morning, and I don't know why. I went to log on and the app just was down, and I couldn't get to the, I have a very regimented morning. Right, I go to the gym exactly the same time every day. I was 4 minutes late because the Tesla app was down. Right, there's no. Can the Bitcoin server be down, or Bitcoin network be down?
In order for the Bitcoin network to be down, you would have to interrupt all of the mining activity, all of the nodes around the world. And that's why this is important, is money is an essential service, right? You can't just have monetary network go down and expect everything to be fine. It has to work 24/7 every day. So since it's been online since 2009, there's been like 2 glitches that happened in the first couple of years of it being online. But since like 2012, we've never had any downtime in the network. And in order for that to happen, I mean, you could block off the electrical service to half of the globe and it still wouldn't disrupt the network. That's what's so unbelievably innovative about this, is that not only is it secure, not only is it freedom technology because anybody can access it and there's no central point of control, but it's also insanely hard to kill. I mean, you would really have to have full on nuclear aftermath across the world with no power, no connectivity anywhere for the foreseeable future for there to be any sort of disruption. And at that point, you got way bigger problems.
Now I've spent enough time with you, Beau. I am now somewhat comfortable just to pretend like I am, and I still have questions. And look, even though I bought 3 Bitcoin here, I still have questions. Now, just imagine I'm off of that. I'm ready to go mine. And I want to figure out, all right, how much money should I invest in mining as opposed to going to Coinbase and just buying a coin? How do I understand the cost of mining, the equipment, the data, the stuff I need to do to make the investment in mining, right? So if I'm going to go do Bitcoin mining, am I going to create a room here in my house and put some servers in there? You
could. I wouldn't recommend it just because it's not going to be very competitive. You probably have not so good energy rates at a residential level. There's also the heat to contend with and the maintenance, but it could be a fun side project. I do highly recommend that for learning purposes, not for profit purposes.
So my nephew, kind of a funny story. This is going back where they first started. Him and his buddies all came over to my house. They're like, "We need $10,000. If you give us $10,000, we're going to start a Bitcoin farm." I'm like, "I'm in. I'll do it. I'll give you $10,000." I literally said, "I'm in. You buy the supercomputer, buy the computers, buy the stuff, get it here." And then they went off smoking dope all day and they never showed up again. I was like, "All right, what happened, you little kids? You guys were giving me the Bitcoin mining. Now, let's forget that. They were just stoned or whatever they were decided to do it. And let's say that we really wanted to go Bitcoin mine. So and so there's a couple ways. I can do it myself here, and does my internet connection and the speed and all that stuff have effect on my ability to mine? It's kind of like, having great mining tools like, the big giant backhoe versus the, those super giant dump trucks? Are there the equipment I use? Does it affect my ability to mine?
100%. There's different kinds of equipment. I would also say, in addition to the equipment, determining your success is your access to energy. So you could run like 1 or 2 miners in your home probably without any issues, unless your wife gets mad at you for having, essentially jet engines in the garage, because they are quite loud.
They are. Okay. So these things are just because the heat that goes off at the fans are really loud.
Exactly. So a single unit is consuming about the same amount of energy as most people's homes on an annual basis.
And I have a really low energy home. So, so this is where the energy consumption, right? And we talk about 400 amps to run a computer, running supercomputers?
3,600 watts about. So multiple space heaters running full time at full blast.
All right. Got it. So so just if you and I wanted to do a podcast and what's the investment?
So a single unit, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to get the top of the line one. And what we do is we stand up the data centers and actually manage the services for people so that they can buy the computers and then have it completely managed for them and scale up as much as they want. So people start with a single unit many times, sometimes 5, 10 units. We have clients with 500 or more units. It's really a very scalable income stream. And that is not the case if you're going to try to do it yourself. There's quite a bit of infrastructure that goes into making this something that you can grow into.
Right. And just if I wanted to do it so I could see it, right here, I'm going to switch over to having, because you guys offer this as a service for the investor, right? You take all the weight of putting it together, figuring it out. I mean, what happens? I walk in my Bitcoin farm and they're all off. I mean, now I have to call that tech guy who, when I call him, he always makes me sound stupid. Like, okay, it's you again calling, and he's like, just turn off your computer, turn it back on, and I'm like, okay. Right? I have a tech guy, Joey. He's great, but I swear to God, he looks at me like, you breathe and walk at the same time, right? He's got that look in his eye, like, really, kid? You're a grown ass. You're 57 years old. You can't figure out how to send an email. I'm like, all right. All right. Now, just imagine I want to do one here together, right? So if you and I, you'd help me buy a machine, right? Now, is it a website I go to? Is it a software I download? What am I doing if I want to farm? What's the actual system that you're using?
So you would go to our website, abundantminds.com. You would get on a call with one of our client advisors, have a conversation where they're not going to make you feel stupid, because this is emerging technology. You shouldn't feel stupid. You should be getting educated. And if you want to move forward, they're going to design a package that makes sense for you, your budget, your goals. If you need to get tax write-offs before the end of the year, as we're recording now, that's what we're going through. Is so many people are trying to get their 100% bonus depreciation before the end of the year. So you'd get your units, they'd be set up, you'd learn how to configure your pool to get mining payouts. And then all throughout the process, we are not going to look at you like you're stupid. The whole point of this is not only to earn, but also to learn. So we do monthly master classes. We have one-on-one consults that are included with you just being a hosting client, so that all the questions that you've had on the podcast so far, Anthony, you can ask in a safe space where somebody's going to give you a direct answer and help you navigate not only how this works, but how to keep it safe, how to be successful in it, how to navigate the most common pitfalls that people have getting into this, because it's not the simplest industry. I mean, once you understand it, it's pretty straightforward and makes sense. But when you're first learning about it, it really helps to have somebody who's there to just give you unbiased opinions on how to navigate security, custody, all the things that trip people up when they're first getting in.
All right. Now the computer is going, and it's out there doing these random numbers at some volume and speed, right? And we're okay. So we go through your network. We're now farming. We're Bitcoin farming, right? Mining, Bitcoin mining, and we're out there trying to find them. How do we know when we find one? Is it like when you're like when you're looking for rings on the beach, you have one of those little, like a little metal detector. I was on a beach in Florida this week, and I saw some old man like walking the beach. I'm like, what the fuck? He looks nuts. But he stopped and he started digging. And all of a sudden, it looked like he found a ring. I'm like, oh, Look at that. So I'm guessing finding a Bitcoin's got a lot like finding a ring in the sand on a beach somewhere, right? Are there places where they show up more often? Is it like do you get like when I'm fishing, I know what a profile looks like for a good fishing spot. Is the same thing happen with Bitcoin? Is there like you start with 9s instead of 7s, and is there like a technique to it?
It's really just a game of probability. So when you're going out, your individual machine is probably not going to find a block in even years. I mean, it's a 1 in several million chance for you to find a block. And so in order to ensure that you've got consistency in what you're earning, most people choose to go the route of pools. And just think of a pool like a group of friends that you go into the lottery with. You split the rewards, and because there's more of you going after it, there's a higher probability that you're going to find any given reward. So pools are exactly the same. You're guessing a bunch of random numbers, millions of other people alongside you are guessing random numbers. When one of them finds it, everybody splits it evenly according to the work that they contributed. So you don't have to go find an individual block, although we do have clients who are mining with an individual machine looking for an individual block, because if you get it, that's a huge payout. And that truly is like having a lottery ticket. But in practice, when you're doing this as a Bitcoin earning, income producing activity, joining a pool is what most people do to make sure that you've got reliable, consistent, measurable rewards rather than waiting months or years to hit a block.
All right. So today, as we're recording, today's the 10th day of December in 2025, right? So what's Bitcoin at today?
Somewhere between 90 and 100,000. I haven't checked in the last couple of days.
All right, 90 to let's call it 100,000 just for round numbers. So if I found a Bitcoin, it'd be worth $100,000. Now, how do I know when this thing's going right? It's got the it's just flipping through all the numbers. How do I know when I get it? How do I know I just run right past it?
Oh, it just shows up. So as soon as your computer finds it, there's a chain of software commands that happen that route that straight back to you. So,
all right. So even at hundreds of thousands of transactions a second, it knows it's got it. Right. So, I mean,
immediately.
It doesn't make sense about that. Like, wouldn't it know it's close? I mean, does it have it like you got 9 out of the 10, 12 figured out? It's not like
nope.
You start to feel it. It's not like, when I got to go to the bathroom, I start getting a little anxious. It's not like is there like a thing that happens when you're getting close to them, or just randomly pops up?
There's no feedback mechanism until you actually find the number. So you could be 1 digit off and have no idea until after that block has been found.
All right. Now I'm doing this myself. There's some value to doing it yourself. You're saying I could get $100,000 for the one coin I find, and just to your point, how long would it take? It could be one day or it could be 10 years.
Yeah. With a brand new machine, like top of the line efficiency right now, it's still a 1 in several million chance. So odds are you find a block every several years, which is probably not good business for most people.
All right. So that one block, and what does that cost me to run that machine for the year?
If you're working with us, that machine costs about $225 a month. So $2,700 for the year.
All right. So, wow. So for $2,700 a year, right? The machines that I would buy through you, and how often do they find a Bitcoin?
That's the thing. It's totally based on probability. So your machine, we've actually got one client in particular who's has a pretty good fleet, somewhere between 10 and 50 machines. I forget exactly how many, but his machines have found 3 blocks in the last half year. And that's statistically very improbable. Now he's part of a pool, so he just got his equivalent share. He didn't get the whole block of 3.125 Bitcoin, so 300K or so. But we can see, because this pool has some transparent statistics, that his machine was the one that guessed the right number and helped the pool win the block. So statistically, that's very improbable, but it happened.
Is it like a slot machine where it starts getting so good, the network shuts it down?
No, not at all. As long as you're participating honestly, then,
yeah.
there's no edge to this. I think that's
Okay.
the
There's not like
point.
an edge. I got it.
There's no smarter miners than others. There's only larger amounts of brute force. There's more computing power. There's not better computing power in this.
Right. So it's like not like a lucky machine, or I hit it 2 times on the side and I yelled yippee and then hit go.
I let you believe whatever you want to believe. In a numeric sense, there's nothing special about that machine over another, other than things happen. I mean, there are reasons why things happen that are just completely out of our ability to reason them as people, and that's something I can't control for in the business.
All right, and there's no when you look at the Bitcoin number itself, the Bitcoin, the 12 characters, is there a characteristic to it that's universal? Is there like most of them have 7s or 2 7s side by side? I mean, is there it loves the letter Q. Q and 7 seem to be good numbers to use.
It is completely random when it comes to finding the block. So your machine actually getting it right and winning that reward. The network is actually adjusting based on how much computing capacity is on the network. So if all of a sudden double the amount of miners exist, the network actually has an adjustment mechanism for that and will make it twice as hard to guess the number. So same thing happens if, say, China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021, about half the network just fell off. And suddenly everybody that was left it was twice as lucrative for them. And blocks were coming in slower. So the network saw that, it adjusted the difficulty, it made it easier because suddenly there's half of the work being contributed to find the next block. And this is a rabbit hole in itself, talking about the difficulty adjustment, but it's part of what makes the network so incredible, is that there's all of these mechanisms to self-adjust depending on how we behave as humans, how much computing power is going at the network. And it's living, breathing code that adjusts to physical inputs in this really dynamic way that, as an engineer, it's just unbelievable to watch how it functions and how it was conceptualized. It's really one of the most beautifully designed things that I've ever seen in my life.
It's one of the things that's funny. The problem with my brain is that when I don't have an answer about something, right? I reach back in my database and I find the dirtiest, nastiest little answer that I've had, something that happened in my past, and I put it in that spot, right? So I don't understand it. So I got a naysay because my prehistoric brain wants to keep me safe. So it finds, all right, you shouldn't do this. And I think that's why having you on, look, we spent an hour talking about understanding the Bitcoin. We haven't got into all the other stuff about, how does Bitcoin, how does it become profitable? So maybe let's move over there now. Let's just say that we trust the network and the system itself. Now, as a team, I want to come and make an investment. How do I know, again, compare buying in a Bitcoin from Coinbase as to mining it myself? How do I understand the value proposition of doing my own mining?
So there's a few reasons why people mine versus buy. One I mentioned briefly, which is there's a tax advantage. If you're working in the physical world, you have physical equipment, that is 100% write-off in year one. So
if I use you to mine, that equipment's mine, just sitting in your warehouse in the back. Yeah.
Exactly. Think of it as a fully managed passive income stream that you had a startup cost for in purchasing the equipment. The other reason that people get into mining is if you mine efficiently, if you've got good energy relationships, if you have high uptime, things are taken care of to a high standard, then you're producing Bitcoin at a discount over a long period of time, which means that for the same amount of capital, you are getting more total Bitcoin accumulation. And if you're bullish on Bitcoin, if you believe in the asset, then getting as much of it as possible, as efficiently as possible, is going to be a winning strategy.
Well, I mean, so that's what. So can I look at? Do I compare you to other networks? Is that how you compare your network to, let's say, Bob and Betty down the street over here who've got a Bitcoin farm, are mining miners? and they say, hey, I want you to come with me. Am I comparing your numbers? And is that really essential? Is that, let's answer that one. So do I compare your productivity compared to their productivity? How do I pick who do I work with?
It's a matter of comparing cost and what you get as a service. So I didn't get a chance to really go into this, but my wife and I originally just wanted to be Bitcoin mining customers. So we were looking to invest in a company like what we operate today and just be the passive receivers of Bitcoin and owners of those machines that are producing it. And we sold real estate to get into this. And it was a $500,000 loss experience for us the first time that we tried to work with a partner. So we actually built our company to do exactly what we were looking to do when we first got into the space and cure all of the ills and bad business practices that seem to be rampant in early stage industries. So there's other people that do what we do in terms of hosting miners and helping people get Bitcoin income that way. But I would argue our service is highly differentiated just in the way that we've designed it to be totally hands-off, passive, all-inclusive, get all of the education and support that we're so proud of, and do so in an environment, the Pacific Northwest, where energy is renewable, where the climate really supports longevity of these machines. I mean, there's more that I could talk about than we have time for, but it is, in a sense, something that other people do, and you can find the service somewhere else, but nobody else does it like we do.
I love it. I love it. And we'll have you on some more. I mean, look, I think this is probably one of the most educational Bitcoin things we've ever gone through. And thank you for being so vulnerable and letting me ask these ridiculously stupid questions. But I really do feel like I can see it a lot better. And I want to have more of them, right? I want to have more of these. I really am curious about it, and then we didn't start to unlock why it's the money of the future, why having these assets, why it makes sense as compared to the big pile of money with me and my shotgun. There's a whole bunch more to get into it, but we'll have you on the show some more to unwind that in our next episode. So thank you for this. Thank you for the time today, and thank you for just allowing me to be a little ignorant and ask some questions.
Absolutely. And I think for anybody listening, there's always going to be more than we can cover in a podcast. This is an infinite field to be learning about. And just like you're having to learn about AI to understand what the world is going to look like, and people had to learn about the internet to be able to navigate the world that was being built, this is a component of the future that I think, even if you don't own a lot of it, you will probably regret not learning something about it, because it is a fundamental force that's shaping a lot of changes in how we interact, how we cooperate, how we use money, how we interact with energy. I mean, it goes so much deeper than most people appreciate. And I think that every minute that you invest into understanding that depth returns for you, maybe even more than the actual return of the Bitcoin that you own.
All right. I think the next time we'll get into finance, energy, technology. We'll get into all those frontiers and wealth creation. We'll dive into all of that stuff. Beau, so grateful for you on here today. And I wish you so much success. And I really am just so grateful for you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate you.
Audience members, again, last week, blow me away, 130,000 downloads on YouTube alone. We had double that on Spotify and Apple Music, Apple Podcast. Just amazing. All of you, thank you for joining this ride with Jonathan and myself and the whole team in the background. It does make a difference if you can like and subscribe right now. It does make a difference. It gets us guests like Beau who get on here and get vulnerable and teach us all what's going on. And as always, thanks for listening.